Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
Yes, America's anchorman is away, and this is your undocumented anchorman. No supporting paperwork, living the dream act, living in the shadows, and loving it. We are live from Ice Station EIB in far northern New Hampshire. Mr. Snerdley is keeping an eye on things all the way down in Florida, and halfway in between, we have Mike and Ali in New York, in our New York studio. So everything is set to go. 1-800-282-2882. Mr. Snerdley isn't going to let things get too much out of control. Rush will be back tomorrow, but I am honored to be here, and it's always a great thrill for me to be here. If you're one of these liberals fleeing the country, either because, particularly if you're a Hollywood celebrity, if you're fleeing the country either because Trump was elected or because Harvey Weinstein is chasing after you with his pants round his ankles, do stop in and say hello. We're just shy of the Canadian border, and you can't miss us because we got a big sign out there on the interstate saying "Last Rush Guest Host" before the border. So if you are passing by, then do stop in and say hello. Yesterday, Rush was talking about how the left is imploding everywhere you look. And you can kind of see it on this hearing with Jeff Sessions that's going on right now. I'll bring you any breaking news, from that, if there is any. I hate these hearings. I hate the U.S. Senate, don't you? Be honest. I might expand on that later. I can't stand I spent the entire Monica trial there, and at the end of it, I was in favour of doing what New Zealand did and abolishing the upper house and becoming a unicameral legislature. The United States Senate, and particularly hearing, I testified before a Ted Cruz subcommittee, and I can't stand these hearings. Anyway, I'm getting distracted because I loathe the United States Senate. But at any rate, Jeff Sessions is there right now, and Pat Leahy. These are like the epic showdowns you have in this particular committee. You got like Pat Leahy versus Orrin Hatch versus Dianne Feinstein. It's like everybody at the old folks' home playing Godzilla versus King Kong for the night. So Pat Leahy starts going on about Russia, starts going on about Jeff Sessions meeting with the Russian ambassador in Washington. The Russian ambassador in Washington, this Kislyak guy, is like one of the most sociable people around. He's there everywhere. Did Jeff Sessions meet with him to transfer 20% of U.S. uranium to him via a Canadian cutout? No, oddly enough, that's what the Clintons did. But the minute, old Pat Leahy was cranked up and started going on Russia. Rush yesterday was talking about how the left is imploding everywhere you look, and they just dig in deeper and deeper and deeper. All the smart people, you notice all the smart commentators, including most Republican commentators, thought that Trump had made a mistake to wade in to the anthem controversy a couple of weeks back. They all said this isn't the sort of thing the president should do. The president is the chief executive of the United States of America. He is one of the symbols of America, along with the anthem and the flag. And so their fates are inextricably linked. If contempt for the flag and contempt for the anthem take off, that's very much of concern to the president. And so Trump waded in, and he waded in brilliantly, and he made it about disrespect for the anthem rather than whatever the hell it was Colin Kaepernick was supposed to be protesting about, whatever it was. Nobody talks about that anymore, and those guys can't even explain it anyway. And there's Hillary talking about how Russian interference in the U.S. election was equivalent, the cyber equivalent of 9/11. And as she's doing this, the What Happened tour has now gone overseas. She's sitting there in front of a London audience, and she's explaining why taking a knee is a reverent thing to do, as she puts it. It's a reverent thing to do. You take a knee during the national. It's a reverent thing to do. No, when the national anthem plays, you stand up. You take a knee when you're in church. There's no point taking a knee on the New Jersey Turnpike. That may be reverent, but you're also blocking traffic in all directions. So Hillary is actually kind of going off the rails during this little book tour of hers and digging in deeper and deeper. And Rush tied all this together by saying that the left was imploding everywhere you look. And I just picked up the top of Mr. Snerdley's stack of stuff today that he'd just sent over. And right on top, from the New York Times, women denounce harassment in California's capital. This has nothing to do with Harvey Weinstein. This has nothing to do with actresses. This has nothing to do with the Hollywood casting couch. They've got a whole other casting couch at the California State Assembly. More than 140 women, including legislators, senior legislative aides, and lobbyists, came forward to denounce what they describe as pervasive sexual misconduct by powerful men in the nation's most influential legislature. The word they left out of that, by the way, is overwhelmingly Democrat legislature. Women complained of groping, lewd comments and suggestions of trading sexual favors for legislation while doing business in Sacramento. Christina Garcia, a Democratic member of the state assembly, said Tuesday she has been routinely accosted by men who harassed her and made comments about her appearance while she was trying to discuss legislation. So here she is trying to discuss making California a sanctuary state, and instead she's being sexually harassed. Multiple people have grabbed my butt and grabbed my breasts, she said. We're talking about senior lobbyists and lawmakers. Pamela Lopez, a partner at a Sacramento lobbying firm, walked into the restroom, she said, and suddenly felt a large body pressing behind her. When she turned around, she saw that a lawmaker had locked the door behind him and had undone his pants and asked her to touch his genitals. This is in the restroom. And, of course, being a perfectly politically correct they've got, you can use whatever restroom you want. You've got your men, your women, your transgendered, you're all walking around in the same restroom. So she goes into this one, and this guy comes in behind her, locks the door, and starts masturbating. Christine Pelosi, a signer of the letter, who is the leader of the California Democratic Women's Caucus, said that legislators act differently in Sacramento. It's almost fantasy camp, as opposed to how they act at home. And she's, by the way, if you're thinking Christine Pelosi, what an interesting name. I wonder if, well, yes, by happy coincidence, she's the daughter of Nancy Pelosi. And she said it was very difficult for many of these women to sign these letters, this letter complaining about the culture of pervasive sexual harassment in one of the most democratic legislatures in the country. In California, it's a democratic state. It's the bluest of blue states. It's the nation's first sanctuary state. Where's the sanctuary for poor old Nancy Pelosi's daughter? Where's the sanctuary for Christina Garcia, a Democratic member of the state assembly, who's trying to talk about sanctuary state status? And meanwhile, all these senior lobbyists and lawmakers are grabbing her butt and grabbing her breasts. This is life in the capital of California in 2017. And it's extremely interesting to me. One of the things that emerges from this Harvey Weinstein business is that what ties it to the Democrat Party, I would say, is that it's all about power. And power is its own justification. Because Democrats are serious about power. And if you're interested in power, and power is necessary for you to accomplish all your goals, then the power relationship becomes the most important thing that matters in your life. And in Hollywood, for example, Harvey Weinstein isn't just any old producer. He's not just the guy who produces Iron Man 9 and Ant-Man 12 and Cardboard Man 37 and Franchise Man 42. He's the guy who makes all the Oscar-winning films. He's had, in the last 28 years, he said last year when he got a nomination for Lion, that was his 26th Best Picture nomination in 28 years. So he's the guy you go to if you want to be in an Oscar film. It's in other words, it's the film that gets the awards. It's the upscale, high-class, Oscar bait movie, and a lot of big A-list actresses are prepared to be in those movies because they know they've got a better shot at an Oscar in a Harvey Weinstein movie, and he knows that, so he'd use it to negotiate their salaries and everything. But, and this is the point, this is the point here, I think it was a completely cynical move to make these kind of films because women are prepared to do more to get into that kind of film. So in other words, I think he chose to make all these upscale Oscar bait movies specifically because it made it easier for him to meet and attack hot-looking women. And I think that's actually true. That's what ties it to the way the Democrats operate. It's totally cynical. If you look, for example, at how Bill and Hillary Clinton have enriched themselves over the years at the hands of some of the most revolting people on the planet, at the hands of big shot Saudi princes and Kazakh oligarchs and all these people, the most malodorous, crummy, sleazy people on the planet. And they use all this good stuff they care about when they claim to care about diarrhea in Africa, the big Clinton Foundation issue. It's a completely cynical thing. Barack Obama, again, same thing. You know, at one point, I think you've made enough money. Well, he doesn't think that. Hillary doesn't think that. Bill doesn't think that. That's why they do all the Goldman Sachs speeches. The politics is a cover. Just as all the high-class, progressive, liberal value movies that Harvey Weinstein made was a cover. And now we're seeing, weirdly, the cover just falling apart. So the Democrat State Assembly in California is apparently a sewer of sexual harassment where female legislators have... I can't even believe how this can happen in Sacramento, in a legislature. I don't know how it can happen that female lobbyists can be attacked in the bathroom of the California legislature, but it's going on as we speak. So that ties in with what Rush was talking about yesterday. The left is imploding on every front. We are going to pick through parts of that implosion in the next 3 hours. Rush will return to tomorrow for full-strength, authentic, all-American excellence in broadcasting. This is Mark Steyn on The Rush Limbaugh Show. Mark Steyn in for Rush on America's #1 radio show. There was a great moment in his President Trump's press conference with the Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras yesterday, because Prime Minister Tsipras was asked whether he still considered Trump evil. Apparently, last year, the Greek Prime Minister, Mr. Tsipras, said that he regarded the ideas that Trump represents as evil. What this nomination marks, the idea it represents, the appeal it reaches, and the threat to become even president. I hope we will not face this evil. And it was a fascinating moment because Trump looked kind of flattered that he didn't know the guy had denounced him as evil just a few months ago, a year ago, Mr. Tsipras. And Mr. Tsipras evidently does not regard. He's moderated his position. Trump is still probably basically evil, but he's like a moderate evildoer. He's like a bipartisan reach across the aisle evildoer now. So Mr. Tsipras, the Greek Prime Minister, has moderated his thing. And Trump was like entirely like, he's great. Well, he's a great guy, a fabulous guy. Love the Greeks. Greeks, wonderful people. Love this Greek guy. Wish I'd known he'd call me evil. I would have made a little more of it in my speech. It would have been terrific. Great honor to be called. When you're talking with the great, fabulous people, lovely country, and I'm just thrilled, honored that the Greek Prime Minister thinks I'm evil. And he just like shrugged it off. But basically, it was a wonderful moment because it actually illustrated, and this guy Tsipras, this Greek Prime Minister, what does he know about Trump? All he knows is because he's got CNN International on in the background, and he watches, he picks up a day-old copy of the New York Times once in a while. And you can't blame the guy if that's what he's watching, that's what he's reading, why he thinks Trump's evil. But in fairness, he's moderated his position. Whereas all the other lefties, the guys who gave this Greek the impression that Trump is evil, are still committed to the idea that Trump is evil. And the left is completely incoherent on this kind of thing. You know, on the one hand, they're all resist, hashtag the resistance. We are the hashtag revolutionaries. If only George Washington had had a hashtag, who knows what he could have done? And so they're going on, resist, hashtag the resistance, or I'm really into the resistance. Last night I did 2 resist tweets, so I'm like really committed to the whole resist thing. Resist, and then something like the Las Vegas thing happens, and the same people who are saying resist are suddenly saying, no, only the government should have guns. We'll resist with our hashtags, but only the government should have guns. Trump is literally Hitler, and that's why he should have all the guns. That's how the left thinks. There's no logic, there's no coherence, but what there is the assumption that there is this thing called the state. There's elections, and once in a while, the literally Hitler guy will win the election or whatever, or Mitt Romney might win, or Bob Dole might win, or John McCain might win. But you don't need to worry because the big permanent bureaucracy, the state, is there just all the time, getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and elections don't really change that. And that's one of the, I think, one of the biggest contributions that Trump has made is where he's actually changing where the public discourse is, where the conversation is. Just to go back to that, which is what he did on this NFL thing, and I say thank God for that, because there's nothing more, I said the last time I was here, you can either be a national anthem or you can be... A national anthem is either a national anthem or it's an opportunity for self-expression, but it can't be both. A national anthem means that everybody does the same thing when the band strikes up the national anthem. Otherwise, it's not a national anthem. If the one guy stands up and the other guy takes a knee and a third guy does an interpretative dance... showing how all the wicked white colonists gave the nice Native Americans diseases and didn't pay full market price for their beads. It's not a national anthem. And Trump identified that as the issue. He intervened and he made that the central question, and he won. So that nobody is even talking about all the stupid so-called complaints that everybody else has been doing about it. So he actually intervened, he changed where the conversation was, and he won on that. And you have to ask yourself, would Jeb Bush have done it? Would John Kasich have done that? No, they wouldn't. Yeah, Rush is out today, but he will be back tomorrow for the real deal, authentic, full-strength, all-American excellence in broadcasting. But as American as apple pie. But in the meantime, it falls upon you to be discombobulated by a sinister foreigner. American as apple pie a la mode. So it's close, but no cigar. Close, but no cigar. If you are fed up with being discombobulated by sinister foreigners when you switch on the radio, there's a way around it. You can go to rushlimbaugh.com and become a Rush 24/7 subscriber. And if you do that, you will never have to miss Rush when he's away ever again. Doesn't matter what he's doing. He could be at a golf thing. He could be at some NFL thing. He could be somewhere on his plane flying over who knows where, and you won't even know about it because you'll be a Rush 24/7 subscriber, which means that you can listen, watch, read Rush 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all 365 days a year. And if you go to rushlimbaugh.com and you sign up today, you can get the new El Freebo that he is offering to yearly members. There's two ways you can join. You can do this kind of pay-as-you-go thing, I don't know, it might not be worth it, it might be a bit of a scam, so you just want to sign up for a month or whatever. And that's fine, give it a go, see whether you like it. You might not, and then, you don't want to be stuck with it for the whole year, but you will like it, and that's why you're better off actually signing up for a full year. And if you do take out a yearly subscription, you will receive the new El Freebo, which is the exclusive EIB Rush tumbler. And I've got a Rush tumbler. It's a terrific thing. I've been keeping it in the car, keeps your coffee warm and all the rest of it. It's a great thing to have in the car. I demonstrated it on the air last time I was here, and you should never try using the Rush tumbler and speaking on the radio into the golden EIB microphone at the same time, because I tipped large portions of the coffee down my shirt front, and the golden EIB microphone is now somewhat coffee stained. But the point, it does actually add an echo sound to the microphone, because you're like Elvis doing Heartbreak. My sins, my baby left me. You get that slight reverb quality. Anyway, that's what you can try that. It'll improve your Elvis impersonation if you get the free Rush tumbler when you take out a year's subscription to rushlimbaugh.com by going to Rush 24/7. And it's a fantastic tumbler. It's got Rush right there on the front of it. But anyway, I'm talking too much about the tumbler. The tumbler is just the bonus. What matters is you get Rush 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, whenever you want him. And all you need to do is go to rushlimbaugh.com and sign up today. Let us go to Jess in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Jess, you're first up on America's #1 radio show. Great to have you with us.
Thanks, Mark. You're my favorite sinister undocumented foreign guest host.
That's great. It should be a more competitive market, but I'll take that award. That's more likely than getting a Best Actor award for being in a Harvey Weinstein picture. So I'll thank you for that, Jess.
My question is about the sexual harassment rash or epidemic in liberal cities and states like New York and California and Hollywood and Sacramento. I wonder how many sexual harassment claims or sexual assault have taken place in, conservative states like Indiana, West Virginia, Iowa, and Texas, in the capitals, the city capitals. I wonder how many lobbyists and legislators have harassed women in those cities and states, because you have someone like Mike Pence who won't even get in the same elevator with a woman or have dinner with her alone because he doesn't want to leave himself open. He doesn't want to create that impression alone, allow that to happen. However, that could happen in a conservative state.
Yeah, no, I think that's an interesting point. Conservatives are accused of being uptight about sex. And the left likes to sneer about that. And the left is particularly fond of doing that with female commentators. I mean, if you look at the Twitter responses that people like Michelle Malkin and Ann Coulter get, it's actually astonishing how crude and revolting and misogynist and violent and hateful just the explicitness of the rape fantasies these guys indulge in with right-wing women is incredible. And there's not a monopoly of virtue on either side. But the fact is that what matters in these Democrat relationships is power. And because they're interested in power, and they're obsessed with power, and that Lenin line that you can't make an omelette without breaking a few eggs, they're serious about that. And that was the lesson that powerful men took away and powerful women took away from the Clinton era. That it's a shame. Maybe the guy shouldn't have dropped his pants in front of Paula Jones, but he's still our guy. And Bill Clinton with his pants round his ankles is less threatening to a woman's right to choose than Bob Dole. So we'll go with the guy with the pants round his ankles. Some big shot Democrat guy said this to me, actually, the day before the impeachment trial started. He said, he's our guy. I said, why are you defending this guy? And he said, because he's our guy, and that's it. And it's unfortunate for Paula and Kathleen and Juanita. They're collateral damage. It's as somebody wrote after Ted Kennedy died, that Mary Jo Kopechne, if she were to come back to life now, instead of having been left in a watery grave by a drunk a man whose only thought was to his own self-protection and then the protection of his reputation. But Mary Jo, yes, it's a shame she was stuck down there, left in the car with the dwindling air pocket to die while he swam up to the surface and then staggered back to his hotel and didn't mention anything about the Broad still being down at the bottom of the water until the following morning. Yes, it's a shame. But if Mary Jo came back today, she would thank Ted Kennedy for all the progressive legislation he'd passed in the years since he sent her to his watery grave. And they seriously think like that, Jess. They actually seriously think that this is just that in politics you can't make an omelette without breaking a few eggs. And when Harvey Weinstein makes Shakespeare in Love, you can't make a Hamlet without breaking a few chicks. This is actually how they think, Jess. That's how they're hard-hearted about their calculations in that respect.
Can I ask a question about Harvey Weinstein? Because
yeah, okay.
I think you're right that Bill Clinton's method and the bimbo eruptions and Hillary Clinton's method was to destroy the women. So my prediction, what does Harvey Weinstein do to all these people, media moguls, broadcasters, and the women themselves who have turned on him? Because he made a threat. I'm going to destroy you if you do this. What's next for him? And what's next for them? And what's next for the Uyghurs? I want to know what's next for the Uyghurs.
Well, let me what's next for the Uyghurs? We'll get to that. As far as Harvey Weinstein is concerned, I mean, this is incredible, and this is what's interesting, because let's put aside the movies, and when people talk about the casting couch, as if it's like just the nature of the business, and I forget who it was, I read some comment who said there's nothing like that in any other kind of business. There's no insurance adjuster's couch, so that the fact that there's a phrase like a casting couch, and there's no insurance adjuster's couch, and there's no feed store clerk's couch, tells you that there's an institutional problem in this particular industry. But what's interesting to me about it, Jess, is the media. I mean, this is what's fascinating, is he actually, if someone was going to run a negative story on him, he would call up and essentially give them a development deal with Miramax or with the Weinstein Company. When Tina Brown and he launched Talk Magazine, guess who was on the first cover of Talk Magazine? Hillary! What a surprise! I'll bet it flew off the shelves. Tina said she was surprised to find that Harvey had mysteriously optioned all this rubbish from prominent journalists. You know, they'd write a long, boring piece in the Philadelphia Daily News or whatever, and he would option it for a movie treatment just to keep them quiet, so they didn't write a story about him. So if somebody was working on a story about him, he would call up and say, hey, I saw that interesting profile you did of Mitch McConnell. I'd like to option it for a movie. And he'd just give them some money. And that, Mitch McConnell, the musical, would supposedly be in development at the Weinstein Company for a couple of years, sitting on the back burner, dying quietly in the bottom cabinet of a filing cabinet, bottom drawer of a filing cabinet, and then it would all go away. And that's what's interesting to me about that. That's the relationship between Hollywood and the court eunuchs of the entertainment media. And doesn't that also explain a lot, Jess, about the relationship between politics and the court eunuchs of the Obama-Clinton media, too? I mean, they're not that different, are they?
No, and Obama hasn't denounced Weinstein yet, has he? I believe Hillary sent out a tweet, but I don't think Obama has.
No, I think he did issue. He said he was shocked. He was shocked. But they don't care. They don't care. That's the point. They knew about it and they didn't care. And people said, do you think he would have let his own daughter go and work for Weinstein if he'd known that Weinstein was doing this stuff? And my answer to that is, yes, I think Weinstein distinguishes. Weinstein hit and attacked vulnerable women. He hit Angela, he did this to Angelina Jolie and Gwyneth Paltrow when they were 22, 23. Now, it's 20 years later and they're big, powerful women, and he wouldn't do it to them. He didn't do it to Meryl Streep, and he didn't do it to Judi Dench, and he didn't do it to Michelle Obama, and he wouldn't do it to Michelle's daughter. But if you're not in that privileged club, and they're all about status as well. That's the other thing about the left. They attach this great thing to status. They divide, because it's essentially a banana republic view of society. It's like Latin America. You've got the power. It's not a continuum. It's not a continuum between broke loser at the bottom to king at the top. And in between, there's, a downtrodden peasant. And above that, slightly less downtrodden peasant, and then all through lower middle class, middle class, upper middle class, and then all the way. It's not a continuum like a healthy society is, with movement in between the different levels. Their view of the world is that there's an elite on the top, like a Latin American banana republic. There's the elite and there's the peasants, and there's no middle class in between. And once you start looking at the world like that, it's very easy to say, well, I'm important, and Pat Leahy's important, and Harvey Weinstein's important, and Michelle Obama's important, and the rest of you guys are just in the crowd scene. And just leave your name with the girl at the desk, and if we need someone to say, oh, look, he was brought here as a dreamer, and aren't we, like Nancy Pelosi the other day, aren't we grateful to you, to your parents? They did us such a favor by bringing you illegally into our country and leaving you here like Moses in the rushes, and we're also grateful to you, and it's terrific. Unless you're needed as a prop, you're basically just one of the extras in the crowd scene. And that's how they think about it. And ultimately, it is a left-right thing. Because the interesting thing about this is that we live in a hyper-sexualized culture now that these guys have brought about. And they use it and they work it to their advantage. And they make jokes about Mike Pence, as you said, doesn't like to be alone with a woman, doesn't like to have dinner with a woman, doesn't like to. And they're, what an uptight, button-down, creepy, silly. Well, no, because we no longer have agreed social courtship norms. And so on the one hand, you've got Mike Pence, and on the other hand, you've got what's going on in the California legislature, where Nancy Pelosi's daughter is complaining that the bluest of blue states in the country is blue in the pornographic movie sense, too. That's the world that these so-called progressives have ushered in. Mark Stein in for Rush, lots more still ahead. Yeah, just to clarify what I was saying about the California state legislature, where Nancy Pelosi's daughter is one of the signatories about all the breast groping, butt groping. Lady goes into the bathroom, a top lawmaker comes in after her and starts drops his trousers and starts pleasuring himself. The lower house, the state assembly, has 54 Democrats, 25 Republicans. The upper house has 27 Democrats, 13 Republicans. And both chambers, it's more than a 2-to-1 majority in favor of the Democrats. A sanctuary state. Where's the sanctuary for Nancy Pelosi's daughter? Where if she doesn't want to be groped, if she doesn't want to have some guy dropping his pants in the bathroom when she's trying to, just wash her hands and get out of there. Where's the sanctuary for them? Where's a woman's right to choose not to have California legislators indulging in the sin of Onan before them? Where is it? It doesn't matter. These are all just theories, hypotheticals. They don't really matter because it's all about power with these guys, and the collateral damage is just that. The collateral damage, they're happy to put up with it because in the end, it's all about power. Mark Stein for Rush, lots more still to come. Mark Stein in for Rush. Mexicans are unimpressed by Trump's impenetrable wall. There's a story in the Washington Post that says Mexicans are scoffing at the 30-foot tall concrete wall, and they're saying essentially that there's an acrobatic troupe in Tijuana that will have no problem vaulting over that. So again, this is the living in the shadows thing I like. The Washington Post is interviewing people who are scoffing at how they're going to be able to get over that wall, no problem. Well, we shall see. The point of the wall is not just to keep out Mexicans. The point of the wall is also to tell the world that America is a sovereign nation and has a right to enforce its borders and has a right to build a wall. That's as important a message as anything. Yes, America's Anchorman is away, and this is your EIB Anchor Baby. Honored to be here, thrilled to be here. We are live at Ice Station EIB in far northern New Hampshire. It's just a stone's throw from the Canadian border, but fortunately Canadians aren't the stone-throwing type, so we don't have to worry too much about that. Rush will return for the real deal, authentic, full-strength, all-American excellence in broadcasting. So you need not have any fear that it's going to be all foreign all week long. It's not going to be one of those wacky deals. Rush will return tomorrow. 1-800-282-2882 is the number to call if you want to have your say on what's eating America on this Wednesday afternoon. In the first hour, Jess mentioned, I think he mentioned Uyghur Wednesday, and I used to do this because this is the first Wednesday I've been here in a while for some reason. I don't know why, but I used to do a lot of Wednesdays, and I always used to have a story about Uyghurs. Uyghurs used to be in the news. Obama sprung some Uyghurs from Gitmo, and he dumped them on Bermuda without consulting the British government, and the British government were very annoyed with them. And so these 4 Uyghurs were like the only 4 Uyghurs in Bermuda, because there's not a big Uyghur community in Bermuda. And I actually saw them crossing, I mentioned this before, they were crossing in St. George's, Bermuda, down at the eastern end, on the pedestrian crossing, and they looked like a sort of Uyghur tribute band recreating the Beatles' Abbey Road cover. It was very weird. And then, of course, because Obama had done this deal with the government of Bermuda without clearing it through London, these guys couldn't get any passports, because in Bermuda, if you want a passport, you get a British passport, and it's issued by the passport office in London. And the passport office in London wouldn't issue these guys with passports because so they were trapped. They couldn't go back to China. They couldn't go. And so I used to do Uyghur stories every Wednesday here for a while. Not often, because it's not a big constituency for it, and we'd be losing affiliates. But it is actually a big thing, and the Chinese, Uyghurs are Chinese Muslims, and the Chinese are treating them very differently from the way, say, the United States treats similar threats. And they're actually killing large numbers of these people. And it is interesting to me, when you look at the stories today, there's a story about the Chinese premier saying that it's now time for China to take its place in the world. We think of China as playing good cop, bad cop with North Korea and all the rest of it, but it's worth remembering that China is at heart a bad cop too, and that there is something deeply disturbing about China, not as it is right now, being the second, close to being first economic power in the world. That is not a normal or healthy state for the world. So Uyghur Wednesday is cute, but actually what the Chinese do to their minorities is not actually that pleasant. Mr. Snerdley is down in Florida. He gave me his stack of stuff, and I mentioned the story about the California legislature. I'll just run through the headlines and the stack of stuff that he gave me. After that, Woody Allen warns of witch hunt over Weinstein, then tries to clarify. Michaela Maroney says USA gymnastics team doctor began molesting her at the age of 13. Screenwriter says everybody effing knew about Weinstein. Former Disney and DreamWorks head Jeffrey Katzenberg is forced to deny he made crude sexual remarks about Molly Ringwald after the 80s darling wrote about industry abuse she faced since the age of 13. The Pussycat Dolls, which is a pop group, the Pussycat Dolls deny being a prostitution ring. ESPN football host Sam Ponder calls out sexist history of network's new partner, Barstool Sports, who told her to sex it up and be slutty when commenting on her presentations. And so that's basically every aspect of American culture covered there. You got your movies, you got your pop music, you got your sports, and it's like that all the way down. So Snerdley is focused on and he's not wrong here. You know, what determines what kind of country you live in? Culture trumps politics. Culture trumps politics. That's why all the politicians kiss up to all the Hollywood figures. That's why they kiss up to all the big pop stars. They understand that. That's why. That's why they never act. I'll give you an example. One of the things people complain about George W. Bush, and they don't like looking back on the Bush presidency, and they certainly didn't want another Bush presidency. But one of George W. Bush's greatest moments is he's being interviewed by some journalist who says, I want to do just some kind of quick pop quiz with you. I'm just going to name various TV shows, pop stars and things, and ask you for your opinion on them. And Bush goes, okay then. Okay, first off, Madonna. And Bush goes, I don't like pop music. No, he doesn't say. He says, I'm not into pop music. And that's it. He kills the quiz. He's no interest. And you know what? And you listen to John Kerry talking about how there's a lot of raw energy in rap. It's really exciting. It's in tune with... Teresa and I listen to a lot of rap because you got to be in touch with it to understand what's happening on the street. So, yeah, Teresa and I... what do you listen to at home, Senator Kerry? Well, Teresa and I think it's important to, really be down with what is got cred on the street. So we're like listening to a rap because it's got a lot of anger, got a lot of energy, and Teresa and I are really into that in the evening. So if you come round to our place of an evening, Teresa and I got our feet up and we're listening to some rapper talking about his hoe, and it's because it's important to know that and to be in touch with that. And can you just call security? I think there's a dark-skinned man down the end of the garden. How did that happen? And that's how most of these politicians talk. They pander to these people. They never say we live in a culture where the politicians pander to these people, and you wonder why they do it. It's because they know that the Democrats know this. And that's why that if you get these guys on side, you've got half your work done for you. You see it on the late night talk shows. These are paralyzed, these people. All these big, bold, transgressive people, your Jimmy Kimmels, all the people who go on about Trump, Trump, Trumpity, Trump, 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 the minute they have to make a joke about someone who is not a white Republican male, they've no idea what to do. They're paralyzed with fear. Saturday Night Live, the world's most geriatric, edgy, transgressive comedy show. They've got no idea what to do. What do we do? What do we do about this? We've got like a big Hollywood guy who's friends with the head of the network, and he's going around raping women. He's raped women from I had to correct somebody the other day because he said he'd been raped women on 2 continents. In fact, there's 3 because there's some model in New Zealand. The reason the Democrats love this is because they understand that if you've got the Jimmy Kimmels on your side, if you've got the Harvey Weinsteins on your side, if you've got the Jay-Z's on your side, and you've got the sports on your side as well, then basically half your work is done for you, because the air that everyone breathes then becomes default liberal. The default setting of society is liberal. Politics just occupies a corner. So if you're the Democrat Party, who would you rather have advancing your ideas? Pat Leahy or Chuck Schumer or Dianne Feinstein or Jay-Z and Jimmy Kimmel and Harvey Weinstein? Because those guys do a much better job of advancing your ideas than Pat Leahy and Chuck Schumer does. And that's why, and Pat Leahy, by the way, is a good example of that. Pat Leahy has been in like the last 37 Batman movies. If you watch carefully, Pat Leahy always has a cameo in the Batman movies. That's how serious the nexus between pop culture and the Democrats is. Hollywood is prepared to put Pat Leahy in a Batman movie, and you can bet he didn't have to go through the casting couch. You can bet Harvey Weinstein had no interest in doing to Pat Leahy what he was doing to Gwyneth Paltrow and doing to Rose McGowan and doing to these other actresses. That's the nexus. And if you don't have that, if you like the Republican Party and you don't have that, and you're just advancing your ideas by having politicians talk about the Federalist Papers or whatever, you've basically got far less arrows in your quiver than the left has. And that explains a lot about where we are. And it also explains a lot about why Trump uniquely sees the power of these cultural issues and knows how to seize on them, as he did with the NFL. And sports is interesting to me because I know nothing about American sports. Couldn't tell you I'm usually here. Rush likes to take off the Super Bowl weekend, so I'm often here on the Monday after the Super Bowl. And basically, how I prepare for the post-Super Bowl show is I go on Wikipedia just to double-check whether the Super Bowl is a basketball game, and then I basically wing the rest. I'm an unassimilated. I'm like the world's most unassimilated, fire-breathing imam when it comes to American sports. Don't know anything about them. Don't pretend to know anything about them. But I know this: that is actually one of the most politically correct areas of American life, and that is why what happened in the NFL and got out of control. And the gap, and it's true in all these things. It's true in the publishing industry, it's true in the media, it's true in the movies, it's true in pop music. That there's a gap between the people making this stuff and the audience. Because the audience isn't where Harvey Weinstein is politically. The audience isn't where Jay-Z is politically. But the gap in sports between the people who run it and the intended consumers is wider and wider than ever. And that's what the whole NFL taking a knee thing exposed. These are the NFL is supposed to be America's sport. That's why they get these stadiums with these stupid tax breaks, where already wealthy people, wealthy owners, wealthy players are made even wealthier at the expense of impoverished taxpayers. So stupid things like in New Orleans, where they get the break on the sales tax in the Saints Stadium, but the poor guy running a convenience store 10 blocks away, he doesn't get those tax breaks, and in fact he subsidizes the Saints ownership's tax breaks. But it's the most politically correct thing, and Trump has an instinctive understanding of these issues. He has an instinctive understanding of where American normality is centered on these issues, and he plays them brilliantly. Mark Stein in for Rush. We'll take your calls straight ahead. Hey, Mark Stein for Rush on America's numero uno radio show. Let us go to Rodney in Prairie du Chien, Wisconsin. I hope I'm not Frenchifying that up too much, Rodney. How do you say it in Wisconsin?
Hi, Mark.
How do you say Prairie du Chien? How do you say it?
Prairie du Chien.
Oh, you've anglicized it. It's like all the Quebecers called Benoit, who came down to New Hampshire, all called Benoit down here. So it's Prairie du Chien. Okay, I apologize for over-Frenchifying the whole business. Great to have you with us, Rodney.
Mark, I am a former career military.
Oh, right.
I no longer watch football. I do not buy football paraphernalia. I don't care to talk to anybody about football, and I will remain that way as long as they disrespect what I fought for. And that's the liberty of the American flag.
What do you say? So you're one of these people, like many Americans, who's disgusted by what's going on, and you've basically decided to give up the NFL, even though you love football.
That is absolutely correct.
Just Rodney, you must have heard this because you see people saying this on TV all the time. They're saying that you fought. Follow me on this, Rodney. They're saying that you and your fellow veterans fought in order that Americans could enjoy the liberty to disrespect the flag.
They can, right. That's absolutely correct. However, I don't want them disrespecting what the flag represents. And to me, that's exactly what they're doing, and I cannot handle that.
Right.
And I will never handle that. That liberty is important to me, and I feel it's important to everybody in the world. And I will not give them any respect. I won't talk to anybody about football. I will not ever go to a football game again. That's just the way I feel.
Now, Rodney, all these owners are now trying to come up with compromises. They're saying, well, what about if we hold hands and drop to our knee a minute before the anthem and then stand up, and all these like compromises and things. Are you basically saying what these guys are doing is so disrespectful and so contemptuous of the people that you're done with football for life?
That is correct. I will not support any compromise whatsoever.
So
I put my life on the line for that liberty.
Right, which is serious. So you don't want to be told what it means to be when you've been in the military, when you are supposed to take a bullet for your country. You don't want to be told what that flag means by some guy who gets paid millions of dollars just to run around with a football for a couple of hours.
Absolutely not. I know what that thing represents, and you're not going to convince me any differently. And I hope everyone starts representing this stuff like they should. Back away from football, and their ratings drop off the pages.
Well, good for you, Rodney. And I'm absolutely Rodney from Wisconsin is absolutely right on that. And I can't understand the stupidity of the conversations when people talk about a constitutional right. Oh, you have a constitutional right to do what you want during the national anthem. It belongs to the agreed social norms without which it's not possible to have a country. So if people, obviously, yes, you have a right to free expression. If it's my grandmother's funeral and a dog comes in and wanders into the church up the aisle and cocks its leg on my grandmother's casket, the dog is exercising its right to free expression, but it doesn't mean the dog should do that. You have to have agreed social norms in order to have a society. And one of the most basic is that when they play the national anthem, you do the same thing. And if you don't do the same thing, then it means what Rodney says it means, that there is no agreement on what the flag and the anthem means, and that one side is perceiving disrespect in the other. That's not a small thing. That's corrosive of what binds a society together. Yes, Rush is away, but he will be back tomorrow, and this is your undocumented anchorman, Mark Stein. Honoured. I'm feeling kind of perky. I'm feeling super perky today. I feel almost as perky as Katie Couric. I don't know, is Katie Couric still perky? I haven't seen Katie on TV for a long time, but I feel in a super perky mode, and I'm treating the most withering, excoriating criticism in a very genial and affable manner. I got some emails suggesting that I just made up the fact that Patrick Leahy, Senator Pat Leahy, is in all the Batman movies. He is. His first Batman appearance was in Batman Forever, way back in 1995. Then he played he voiced a governor in Batman the Animated Series. He then appeared as himself in Batman and Robin, and he was in The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises as a member of Bruce Wayne's board, the board of Wayne Enterprises or whatever it's called. He's a board member. Bruce Wayne and Pat Leahy are in business together. And he was also in Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice, playing a senator during a Senate hearing in which the entire building is then destroyed by an explosion. And I must say, when I testified to the United States Senate, I think it was the Science Subcommittee, Science and Technology or whatever it is, chaired by Ted Cruz, I had a strange urge to see the entire Senate vaporized about 2 minutes into that ghastly Senator Ed Markey from Massachusetts, about 2 minutes into his witless presentation in which he needed to be fed all his lines by his aides. I would have liked to see the same kind of vaporization of the entire United States Senate as happened to Pat Leahy in Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice. But he is in all those Batman movies. Don't forget, by the way, if let's put Pat Leahy to one side, even notwithstanding his resuscitation of all this Russia drivel with Jeff Sessions earlier today, I want to put in a word for the Limbaugh letter, because it's America's top political newsletter, and it's every month. And every month, Rush interviews a great thinker. Sometimes he can't get a great thinker, so he interviews me. That only happens once every 3 or 4 years or whatever, so you don't have to worry about it too much. But this month, he's interviewing the economic guru and champion of deregulation, Thomas Hazlitt, who's the professor of economics at Clemson, and he's got a new book out, The Political Spectrum, The Tumultuous Liberation of Wireless Technology. And Rush is, I get Rush. Rush occasionally says, oh, Mark Stein will be with you tomorrow to tell you how the world's all going to hell. And it's true, I'm not as optimistic as Rush. And one of the things that makes Rush optimistic is that he's into all this technological stuff. And so it's a great conversation between him and Thomas Hazlitt about reasons to be optimistic about the future and technology in the future. So you can subscribe to the Limbaugh letter. And if you subscribe today, you'll not only get an extra issue free, so it'll be 13 issues for the price of 12. The year will go on a month longer, but you'll also get Rush's bonus report, 15 Ways to Beat Liberal Lies. And all you got to do is sign up to the Liberal letter. You can get it in print form, you can get it digitally, however you want to do it. Go to rushlimbaugh.com and you'll see the button and click on that for the Limbaugh letter. Let us go to Frankie in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Frankie, you are live on the Rush Limbaugh Show. Great to have you with us.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I first wanted to say that I'm an African American. I'm also, like your previous caller, I'm a veteran. And I have a different take on the protests as far as the national anthem is concerned.
Okay.
You know, it states when we take an oath to join the military, it starts off basically by saying, I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. And then it continues on. But I wanted to just kind of point out where it says, I will support and defend the Constitution. You know, as someone who served in the military, I cannot pick and choose based on my own personal beliefs what I want or how I want someone to interpret the Constitution. Whether I'm a Democrat, a Republican, a conservative, or a liberal, it's not up to me or anyone such as you or Rush or the previous caller to pick and choose how the Constitution is interpreted and how we should apply that to our daily lives. Whether I'm a millionaire, a thousandaire, or I barely eke out a living, the Constitution applies to me as an American citizen. Now, what a lot of people don't understand is that it was a former Green Beret who told Colin Kaepernick to take the knee in the first place, because we don't like to do history in this country, or we pick and choose the history that we go ahead and quote. But when he started the protest initially, Colin Kaepernick was sitting down on the bench. No one said anything, no pundits, no news media. No one even saw the man sitting on the bench. A Green Beret wrote Colin Kaepernick. They met up and suggested to each other that he take a knee on behalf of the military. That's where the knee came from. It had nothing to do with the national anthem, nothing to do with it at all. And I'm sorry, but as an African American, and I'm in my car right now, sir, and I'm going to be honest with you, I drive a fairly nice vehicle. I've been in Myrtle Beach now for 3 years. I've been all around the world, all around this country. I've been pulled over so many times for the most mundane, nonsensical nonsense. As an African American, see, that's the thing. You know, my grandmother used to say, and I'm sure yours did, walk a mile in my shoes and then come talk to me.
No, I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree. Just to be clear where I'm coming from, Frankie, I'm not any kind of American. I'm a foreigner, right? So, so in my cultural tradition, as Al Gore would say, I don't dispute. I don't think people should be at risk of being shot at a routine traffic stop. So I entirely accept that I have not walked a mile in your shoes, and I understand that if I were to, my experience of interactions with the police might be different. And as I said, I generally take the view that that police should only shoot people in exceptional circumstances. My old friend Amanda Vanstone was Justice Minister of Australia. 41 people got shot in Australia, not fatally, just shot, wounded. 41 people got shot in Australia over 8 years, and she ordered a public inquiry to it because she thought 5 people a year getting shot was too much. Iceland, they had 1 person shot. Not in a year, in the entire history of the country. It was about 2 years ago. Someone got, the police shot 1 person in the entire history of Iceland, and they all went bananas about it. So I can understand when you say you're driving around Myrtle Beach in a nice car and you can get pulled over and all the rest of it. All I'm saying to you, Frankie, is that that's an issue. That's an issue for you, and I wouldn't presume to tell you what that's like for you or for any other black man in America today who's a law-abiding person, and he's pulled over because he's got a busted tail light, and he's wondering whether this is going to escalate, and he's going to be some statistic. I entirely accept that I will never know what that's like. But the thing about what you have to remember, Frankie, is that people have concluded, the public has concluded, that hijacking the national anthem isn't doing anything. No one's talking about that. All they're talking about is how multi-millionaire footballers are urinating all over the American flag and the American national anthem. Nobody's talking about your issue, Frankie.
Well, that's therein lies the problem, sir. The issue. Now, we can look at it as, and this is the thing I...
no, but here's no. Just to be clear here, Frankie, nobody's talking about your issue because you chose the wrong forum. People do this. Democrats do this all the time. Maxine Waters gave some political speech at some guy's funeral the other day. You go to a funeral and you want some people to stand up and say reasonably non-contentious things celebrating the life of an 87-year-old guy who's kicked the bucket, and you want to hear nice heartwarming things about what he did in his 87 years, and then some Democrat politician is there going on about how she wants to impeach Trump. Dick Gregory, it was his funeral. So Maxine Waters is going on about Trump at a funeral. And if she wants to impeach Trump, fine. But you don't talk about impeaching Trump at a funeral, and you don't protest policing procedure during the national anthem, Frankie. It's not effective.
Yes, well, sir, I actually agree with you as far as the Maxine Waters bringing up that issue at Dick Gregory's funeral. But as far as our president is concerned, I believe there's a double standard as far as conservative. Because I'm going to be honest with you. While I was serving in the military, most of my friends would say I was leaning conservative. I believe in fiscal responsibility and things of that nature. Where the president lost me, as a father of two daughters, I could no longer justify, as a citizen, not as a servant of the military, but as a citizen, I can no longer justify voting or even considering voting for a man who would presume that he would have the ability to grope my child if she were an adult in any manner he so choose. So, I can't put, and I can, and this is a Christian nation if I'm not mistaken, but for some reason, I guess on election day, most of us so-called Christians, we put our Bible aside that day, or we left it in the car.
Well, Frankie, we'll pick that up on the other side of the break, because I'm up against a break here. But that's a different issue. We'll carry on with the NFL thing, and interested in your point of view. As I said, I think the anthem. They're two disconnected things, and when you drive a dagger through the heart of the national anthem or the flag, there's actually not enough left to talk about that. You can disagree about tax policy, you can disagree about foreign policy. When you actually no longer share enough to react to the flag and the anthem in the same way, then you're basically saying we can't share a country together. And that's the problem with choosing that venue to protest policing. Mark Stein in for Rush. Thank you for your call, Frankie. We'll have more straight ahead. Yeah, I just want to pick up what Frankie moved on to there, that he didn't vote for Trump because of the tape that was released. The left are very, for example, this business about the Clinton deal, where basically these powerful Russians are sluicing all this money to the Clinton Foundation, and in return, Hillary approves the transfer, winds up transferring 20% of American uranium into the control of the Russians. And So what we have, there's no Russian collusion between Trump, in the end you've got Jeff Sessions running into the Russian ambassador and saying, "Oh, hi, Mr. Ambassador, nice to meet you, how's things?" And on the other hand, you've got the Clintons using a Canadian cutout to give 20% of American uranium to the Russians. But it's Jeff Sessions who's colluding with the Russians. This is ridiculous. You always accuse the guy of what you're doing yourself. And that's what they did in the Russian collusion thing. There's no Russian collusion. Now we're saying the same thing applied in the Harvey Weinstein sex thing. We're being told, you see, some liberals can't, they've got to write about it. They've got to say something about it. So they say, well, this is what happens in the America of Harvey and Donald. Harvey and Donald. Frankie was doing a bit of that. He was saying that you've got the Donald Trump is basically doing the same thing as Harvey Weinstein. That's why he's the father of two daughters. He couldn't possibly have voted for Trump. Hillary did it in some literary festival over in the United Kingdom a couple of days ago. She said we have a man who sexually assaults women in the White House. No, 20 years ago we had a man who sexually assaults women in the White House. Trump was talking about how he'd try to kiss some woman, and he says, when you're rich and powerful, you can do anything. That's what he's saying. When you're a big, rich celebrity, you can do anything. And he happened to utter that famous phrase as he was bantering with Billy Bush. And NBC, the same network that didn't think Ronan Farrow's story on Harvey Weinstein was sourced enough to run, nevertheless was happy to leak this Billy Bush tape. That again tells you how corrupted and rotten and stinkingly corrupt American media are. But the fact is, there's actually he's not. Hillary Clinton called the President of the United States a man who sexually assaults women on foreign soil, and he's not. There's now, I think it's over 50 women who've accused her pal Harvey Weinstein of what's going on. There's no comparison with anything that Trump is alleged to have done. I'm actually astonished. I'm not someone who moves in glittering circles, but I'm actually astonished at the number of women Harvey Weinstein has assaulted that I know. There's a British actress called Lisette Anthony who's on some soap opera over there and did something with Harvey Weinstein 25 years ago. She alleged, I was on TV with her on some show. She says that Harvey Weinstein raped her. Emma Decaune, who's a French actress, I was on TV with her dad a zillion years ago. Harvey Weinstein says, I've got this film. It's got a great part for a strong, independent woman. And she goes, what's it called? And he goes, I've forgotten the name. Come up to my room and I'll give you the script. So she goes up to his room and he takes his clothes off and jumps on her. And he comes out, he goes into the bathroom and he comes out of the bathroom naked in a state of arousal. And that's it. That's progressive values in a nutshell. I really am committed to providing more fulfilling, rewarding roles for strong, independent women. And I might give you one if you come up to my room and watch me walking around naked in a state of arousal. And Trump has nothing to do with that. And the left is now, you watch the leftist media. In a couple of weeks, Harvey Weinstein will be some kind of, he'll be moving from hardcore Hillary Obama guy to bipartisan to diehard Republican. Within a couple of weeks, by the time the media are through with this. Mark Stein for Rush, lots more still ahead. Mark Stein for Rush. I tell you one of the things I did like. It's a terrible, boring hearing as usual. But one of the things that was good was when Jeff Sessions today said that Comey deserved to be fired because it was the first time I'm aware of in which the FBI head had announced on his own the conclusion of a federal investigation against Hillary Clinton. In other words, the policeman, the investigator, decides for himself rather than the prosecutor whether the case is going to be prosecuted. That's nuts. And just for that alone, Comey was right to be dismissed. Yes, America's anchorman is out for the day. He will be back tomorrow, but in the meantime, it's your undocumented anchorman, Mark Stein. Honoured to be here, thrilled to be here. It is, as I've said for many years now, it's a great, great privilege to be able to sit behind the golden EIB microphone on America's #1 radio show. There's no other show on radio and television that has this audience, and to be able to come to a country as an immigrant and to be here, it's a great thrill. We are live at Ice Station EIB in far northern New Hampshire. If you're fleeing the country, do swing by and say hello. We've got a big sign out on the highway, Last Rush Guest Host Before the Border. You can't miss it, and we always do love to see you. And Mr. Snerdley always chides me for never plugging anything until the final hour of the show. And I can't think of anything I've got to plug at the moment. I think my career's sufficiently collapsed now. I don't have anything going on, but if you go to steinonline.com, STEYN online.com, if I have got anything going on, you'll find it. What am I doing? I must be doing. Should I plug my cat album? It's been out a while, but it's still sounding great, I would say. That's Feline Groovy, Songs for Swinging Cats, and my cat Marvin sent a copy of it to Rush's cat, Ali, and Ali apparently enjoyed it. I don't know whether Ali still has it in high rotation, but it's popular with cats and humans. And I'm trying to think whether I'm going to be live in it. Am I going to be doing... I'm getting an award with Kellyanne Conway from the Independent Women's Forum in a couple of weeks. So if you're... I think that's at a big gala in Washington, D.C. So if you're in that vicinity and would like to come along, I would love to see you. I just want to go back to this because I talked about this last time I was here, and it's driving me nuts, this anthem thing. Because Frankie said you can't pick and choose what bits of the U.S. Constitution. It's such a banal level on which to have the conversation. And this is why Trump is going to win. I thought Hillary had a kind of meltdown when she was talking about how she was supporting this taking a knee thing the other day. It's nothing to do with the Constitution. And actually, civilized life is nothing to do with what's legal and what's illegal. And I mentioned this the last time I was here. And I mentioned Lord Moulton, who was an English judge, and during the First World War he had one of the all-time great job titles, Director General of the Explosives Department. So he would be the guy in the Batman movie blowing up the Pat Leahy hearing. Great, one of my favorite job titles. And he made what should be the fairly obvious point, that there are things we are entirely... there's a zone of life at one end in which you have absolute freedom. There's a zone of life at the other end of the spectrum in which you are legally obligated to do certain things. But most of life in a civilized society takes place in the huge zone in between the zone of absolute freedom and the zone of absolute law in which one is legally obligated to do things. For example, you can't drive at 130 miles an hour through a 25-mile-an-hour zone. In between that, there is the huge space in which he called the realm of manners, that you do things just because you have enough of a sense of good form, of what is right, of what is appropriate. So, for example, you don't take a knee during your country's national anthem because it upsets all the people who stand up for a national anthem, because you're hijacking the moment, because you're saying, hey, baby, enough of this say can you see by the dawn's early light crapola, let's talk about me. And that ought to drive... I don't even know why this requires explanation. It's your anthem. It's been your anthem long before I got off the boat. And once you do that, and it's not about, you can't pick and choose what parts of the Constitution you support. It's nothing to do with the Constitution. Simple, and this is why Trump's winning on it, because he grasps something very basic that all the highfalutin discussions on the cable channels and all the rest of it don't. Nobody wants to have a constitutional discussion about freedom of expression over the national anthem. It's a shared civic ritual. It's the most basic civic ritual. and I can't bear to watch the NFL. I'm not like Jess, or I'm not like any of the callers we've had who are fans of. I'm not like Rush. Rush loves football. Rush loves football. Loves it, loves it, loves it. I'm bored stiff by it. Can't stand it. Don't get it. It's like I never feel more foreign than. But I couldn't. If I accidentally came across it while I'm channel surfing, I'd be happy to sit and watch the flim-flam, the cheerleaders, the vibe, the hot dogs, and the national anthem. But you can't even do that anymore. That's gone. They destroyed that. And the owners let some of the most people who lead better lives than 99.9999% of humanity has ever lived anywhere on the planet hijack this. And as I said, hey, enough of your rockets, red glare, and bombs bursting on air. Let's talk about me. Let's get that rocket's red glare. Let's have it shining down on me. Let's talk about me. It's a me moment. They're playing the national anthem, and it's really my anthem. It's about me. It's pathetic. It's one of the most pathetic spectacles. And it's, again, as I said, it's your anthem. But I would feel embarrassed if I were watching this at a French soccer game. I would feel embarrassed if I were watching it at a Russian figure skating thing and they were doing it to the Russian national anthem. Americans should be the worst thing for me was when they were playing that game over in London and all these guys take a knee during their own national anthem and then rise respectfully to their feet for God Save the Queen. Trump is right to say that's appalling. And Trump is right because he grasps the basics. It's not something for constitutional lawyers. Who the hell cares about that? It's just most awful, ghastly, revolting, bad manners. And when Frankie says you don't have the right to pick which bits of the Constitution you support, you certainly do have the right. The whole point about freedom of speech is you have the freedom to express yourself by taking a knee during the national anthem, and we have the freedom to express ourselves by turning off the channel and reducing your revenues. And that's what free speech means. It doesn't mean action without consequence. It doesn't mean speech without consequence. It means what is one of the defining attributes of a free society, that free men accept the consequences of their own action. So if you're a boorish, vulgar clod, so up your own self that you can't even understand that a national anthem is about something bigger than you, then you have to accept the consequences of people walking away from your business. And that is what they are doing. And that is... Now, this, again, as I said, civilized life inhabits, in that phrase by Lord Moulton, the realm of manners, where we essentially police ourselves. So, to go back to my analogy of the dog coming into the church and urinating on your grandmother's casket during the service, we are not dogs. We are human beings with self-will entrusted in free societies to police ourselves. And if everything is either legal or illegal, then you are not in a free society. Everything has to be litigated. And again, that is a particular problem in the United States, which, as my friend and Rush's friend Conrad Black likes to point out, America employs as many lawyers as the rest of the planet combined. So we live in a very litigious society. But if we have so lost it that even something like the most basic civic ritual of the national anthem, if even that we can only be discussed in terms of legal and illegal, then that is very bad. And by the way, let me just again, I want to explain this for the benefit of people who don't get it, because it's, as I said, I can't watch these cable discussions on these things now. Everyone's talking about constitutional right. They should support the No, there's no reason why I should support the constitutional right of someone to drop to a knee during the national anthem. And here's the point: it's nothing to do with illegal and legal. Rape. Let's say rape. Rape's in the news because Harvey Weinstein is rapey. I forget how many people he's alleged to have raped. But Rose McGowan claims she was raped by Harvey Weinstein, and Lisette Anthony over in London claims she was raped by Harvey Weinstein. People say rape. Here's the thing. Rape isn't illegal. Here's the point. Rape isn't wrong because it's illegal. It's illegal because it's wrong. And that's the distinction. Right and wrong. Right and wrong. And that's and the law usually aligns with that if it comes to before a court. But it's important to understand the priorities there. Rape isn't wrong because it's illegal because it's wrong. Now, there is a whole sphere of life in which things are legal. No one is questioning whether people have the right to drop to the knee. It's legal to drop to your knee if you want to do that. But it happens to be wrong. And that's what matters. And don't get so hung up on legalisms and constitutional arguments that you don't grasp what Trump grasped. That the majority of the American people look at this and they don't see a constitutional question. They just see bad manners and somebody who is paid millions getting it wrong in a way that American veterans out in some hellhole in Helmand province in Afghanistan or in the Sunni Triangle in Iraq, they don't get it wrong. They know what that flag means. They know what that anthem means because they're at the sharp end of what it means. And if you don't understand that this is not a matter of legal and illegal, but it's a matter of right and wrong, and you don't have, it's morally obnoxious to hijack a nation's anthem for a political protest in this way. And you actually make, that's it. If you want to have a constitutional argument, that's one of those hypotheticals, like the Nazis marching through town. But the Nazis have the right to march through town, waving the swastika and all the rest of it. But that doesn't mean you've got to get the Girl Scouts to celebrate their right to march through town by having a float in the same parade. That's it. Mark Stein for Rush will take your calls straight ahead. Mark Stein in for Rush on the Excellence in Broadcasting Network. Let's go to Peggy in Lawton, Virginia, where they've got a big governor's race going on at the moment. Peggy, great to have you with us on the show today.
Thanks, Mark. I'm happy to talk to you. I'm a longtime reader.
Just give us your take on this governor's race, by the way, because I've seen polls saying that they're tied, and then I've seen polls saying the Democrats 14 points ahead of the Republican. How do you bet it's going to go?
Well, yeah, we know how much we can trust the polls, right?
Okay, so you're not worried by that 14
All I know is that my daughter is studying abroad in London, and she's getting her absentee ballot in. Oh, right. Okay, that's for good. Sure. But, I wanted to get your thoughts, Mark, on, I woke up this morning and the headlines are Trump at war with widow. And, the story is that President Trump, not Trump, but President Trump had placed a call to Sergeant Johnson's widow. Sergeant Johnson was one of the Army soldiers who was ambushed. And apparently she was on the way to the airport to meet the casket. And so he was put on speakerphone. And again, I'm not sure I'm getting the details right, but this is just my quick reading. And there was a congresswoman in the car, the mother of Sergeant Jackson. And as Trump is wont to do, he perhaps inartfully conveyed his condolences. Maybe he said, you know what he was signing up for. But the media is going to town over a call that the President of the United States took time out of his, we assume, busy day to make a call, which I think he should do as former military myself. But they're just ripping him because he worded it incorrectly. And, of course, it was brought to the attention of the media by the Democratic congresswoman in the car. And I'm just sitting here thinking, Bo Bergdahl just pleaded guilty yesterday to misconduct before the enemy.
Right. Actually, he pleaded guilty to desertion
right,
as well. Let's not forget.
And the media has said nothing. And I know you wrote a column on this the other day, and the media has said nothing about the debacle that Rose Garden ceremony was. President Obama, as commander-in-chief, the top dog, must have known the doubts surrounding Bo Bergdahl. He wasn't taken a prisoner of war. He walked off, as we now know. And yet he knew that he had the media in his pocket so much that he could stage this Rose Garden ceremony with the parents of a known deserter. And they would not call him on it. And they didn't. And yet look what they're doing to Trump, who placed a call to a grieving widow. To
the family of a real soldier.
Right.
To the widow and the mother of a real soldier. And there's Obama in the Rose Garden with the parents of a deserter. And the deserter's father is a pro-Taliban guy who's doing the Islamic call to prayer and talking in Arabic in the Rose Garden. And Obama knows it's not just the doubt, Peggy. And again, I feel slightly odd because it's a bit like the national anthem thing. I don't understand why I understand there's jobs Americans won't do, but if you need a foreigner to say how revolting it is that President Obama is honoring a deserter in the Rose Garden, and yet, as you say, the court eunuchs in the Obama media just basically let it slide, even when he was charged with desertion. They didn't show those photographs of Obama with his arms around the deserter's parents in the Rose Garden. It just all went down the memory hole, Peggy.
And I think this is what people like me feel.
Yeah.
I think I'm a fair person, but it's relentless. The media just will not let up on President Trump. And of course he's going to make mistakes and do things wrong, as all human beings do. But I almost feel like I voted for him. They're attacking my vote. They're trying to make my vote.
Yeah, that's the point. That's the point. That's the point of the deplorables remark. And never forget that, Peggy, that actually it's not just about insulting Trump. It's about insulting you, too. That's the point. Yeah, Rush is out today. He's going to be back. He's going to be back tomorrow, the real deal, except no substitutes, because it can be disturbing. It can be disturbing for people who switch on the radio to hear the indispensable voice of American conservatism for 29 years, and there is some foreign guy sitting in there, and it's very easy to be discombobulated by sinister foreign guest hosts, and the solution to that, fortunately, is simple. It doesn't involve Obamacare. They don't cover that. Forget about that. All you got to do is go to rushlimbaugh.com and become a Rush 24/7 subscriber, and you will never know when Rush is away again. He could take some European Union-style Christmas vacation and be away from December the 4th till January the 20th, and you wouldn't be disturbed at all, because with Rush 24/7, you've got Rush in every form known to man, every minute of the day, every day of the week. In audio, in video via the Didacam, and also in print transcripts. Got all the entire archive, shows you might have missed, great moments from the past, the whole deal. And if you sign up now, you can do it two ways. You can do this kind of, well, I'm not sure about this, so I might just give it a go for a month. And that's fine. You can do that. But if you subscribe for the full year, you will get a special El Freebo from El Rushbo with the exclusive Rush tumbler 16-ounce tumbler. It's got Rush on it. I've got one. Looks great. And it goes where you go, so you can take it to the NFL, if you're still going to the NFL. If you're deciding to hell with the NFL, I'd rather go and see cricket or rugby. I'd like to go and see the Fijians play rugby. They're very good at it. You can take your Rush 24/7 free El Freebo, the exclusive Rush tumbler, along with you. To get the tumbler, all you got to do is take out a year's subscription to Rush 24/7. You can do that by going to rushlimbaugh.com. Let us go to George in San Antonio, who also, I understand, George, you want to weigh in on this whole taking a knee business.
Not quite. And thank you, Mark, for helping the cause. And kudos to Peggy. I'm also a veteran of foreign wars, but I have a different take on this NFL thing. And my problem is by boycotting everything NFL, and we're not playing into Soros and the left and their pernicious attempt to destroy yet another American institution, albeit a sports institution. And that's my question to you. Would love Rush's take on this as well someday.
Well, Rush loves sport and he loves football. And the only time we've ever conversed about this, Rush and I made the point, and he agreed that it's the most, as I said, politically correct, or as I think he said, the most chickified aspect of modern life, actually more so than the movies and the music industry and what have you. So in a sense, and there's a reason for that, George. You mentioned Soros and the left and undermining American institutions. What institutions are they most interested in undermining? They're interested in undermining masculine institutions, and that's why all this, transgendered military in your field is so important to them. You know, the diversity cult that has gripped the military. That fellow who was the Army Chief of Staff who responded to the Fort Hood massacre by saying that as tragic as it was, it would be even a greater tragedy if our diversity were to suffer. That's a politically correct military. The Boy Scouts now saying we're going to take girls. That's politically correct Boy Scouts. And now you see what's happening in sports generally and the NFL in particular. And that's because what's important to they don't worry about universities. They don't worry about little talk shows on NPR. They know they've got all those. The big things for them are hollowing out what they see as bastions of masculinity, like the military, like the Boy Scouts, and like sports. So you're right, George, that's important to them. But in a sense, the public boycott here, you're asking the public to put up with something that is that is a provocation and an affront. And I think a lot of people just feel like Mike Pence does, that they don't want to sit through the 2 minutes it takes for someone to kneel during the national anthem. And it's kind of hard to ask them. I mean, you're basically saying people should just roll their eyes and put up with it until these guys get tired of doing it. Is that the idea?
Well, I mean, they don't have to listen to that the first 5 minutes of the game, but by just ignoring it and letting all the money into the coffers for the NFL and the players and the families and everything, I think we're just playing right into the left's hands by just watching them dissolve into something that we've always loved. There's got to be a give and take on both parts of it, but I don't like, what the left is doing or trying to do, as you so well put, on the another masculine institution, but any institution that we hold dear to us.
Well, the point in which it gets to playing on the left's terms, and this is like actually a very interesting question you raised, George. And actually one worth discussing, is one of the reasons why life becomes so unpleasant is because everything is politicized now. Absolutely every aspect. So, for example, you can't just switch on a sitcom because the comedian is making all these political statements. Even breakfast cereal, Kellogg's started getting kind of political, and people were organising a boycott of Kellogg's. Every aspect of life eventually becomes political, so that people will wind up eating different breakfast cereals, and there will actually be no space where people aren't. If you have right-wing and left-wing breakfast cereals and sitcoms and right-wing sports and left-wing sports, then life does become. But the question then is, who's doing that? The question is whether it's the football players politicising the anthem, or whether it's the public reacting to what they're doing to the anthem. And that's a difficult
way
call.
Over their head.
Yeah, I think you're right. The other thing, George, I think, which is interesting is about this, is that sometimes people give the game away too soon. You know, I think it's a tragedy. I think the idea of girls in the Boy Scouts is ridiculous, but people are going to go along with it, and it gets them off the hook on the transgender thing, because there was some boy in New Jersey, or a girl in New Jersey, I can't remember now, some girl in New Jersey who wants to be a boy, or boy in New Jersey wants to be a girl, and who's been allowed in the Boy Scouts, because the Boy Scouts didn't want to be beaten up for another 10 years like they were over the gay Scoutmasters things. So the Boy Scouts are changing. They're transforming into something that would be unrecognizable to the people who founded the Boy Scouts, which was to teach boys to be men. That was the purpose of Scouting a century ago. And instead, they're going to become something else. But they're doing it piece by piece, and in hopes that we won't notice, as in the way, you know, the Episcopal Church and all kinds of other institutions do. And you know where they're going, but they're doing it step by step, incrementally. And what the NFL has done here with its bungling of this players' protest has got too far ahead. So it becomes so the point here is, when you talk about this beloved American institution, the NFL is telling you, screw your beloved American institution. We're in the process of transforming ourselves into something utterly different. And instead of doing it bit by bit the way the Boy Scouts are, we're just getting out in front of our skis and going over the cliff wholesale in an instant right now, George. So either way, your beloved institution, there may be actually no chance to get that back. These owners are telling you something about they're sending you a signal of where they want to take this sport, aren't they?
Could be.
Well,
I don't want to take up much more of your time. It's a tough question to get into.
No, and I take your point. I'm not into the. You know, Rush has been Rush. There's people who listen to this show. They're paid to listen to this show, and they listen to the show day in, day out. It's like they don't have a Rush 24/7 subscription. Well, actually, they do, because some of these guys take out Rush 24/7 subscriptions because Media Matters wants them to monitor the show in case Rush does what Donald Trump is alleged to have done with this widow of a soldier, and he phrases something just a little ambiguously, and then they can all leap on him and say, you got to boycott Rush, you got to dump Rush, you got to we got to shut down this thing. And that, and you see that again with television shows, with everything. The left's thing is to destroy you. They want ruthless ideological compliance. And if you say anything that steps out of line, they want to get a boycott together and destroy you. And I understand the dangers of going down that path. But actually, when you look at the left's cultural victories, of how solid institutions like the Boy Scouts can just be hollowed out, how universities can be hollowed out, of how Hollywood can be, which at least had differing points of view up to a few decades ago, can be hollowed out. They're winning. They're winning. And the argument that people on the right make is the left's tactics are effective. And by playing by the Queensberry rules, we condemn ourselves to lose every time. And that's a difficult choice for Conservatives, and one that the NFL... Thank you for that, George. That was an interesting question. We'll think about that. I might return to it just in a moment. Mark Stein for Rush on America's #1 radio show. Mark Stein for Rush. How sweet it is. Before I go, I want to just... I fell off my chair laughing at this. This Justice Attorney General Jeff Sessions thing isn't the only hearing in Washington this week. Samantha Power had a closed-door session before the House Intelligence Committee. She was Obama's UN ambassador. Okay, so she's not like, a secret spy, a spy agent. She's not M in the James Bond films or anything like that. She's a diplomat at the UN, and she made an average of one unmasking request a day. You know, this is where you get an intelligence briefing and you say, well, I'd like to know the name of that guy who's only identified there as U.S. citizen B or whatever. And she would get all these names. She would be, as I said, she's not a spy master. There's no reason for her to have these names. And her explanation for it before the House Intelligence Committee last week was that someone has been making these unmasking requests under her name. Did you know it was that easy? Would you like to get the name of someone in the U.S. in a U.S. intelligence briefing? And would you like to go, well, all you have to do is just, fax over a request and just sign Samantha Power's name for it. Or Susan Rice. It works every time. And that's Samantha Power's explanation as to why 260 unmasking requests, that's over one every business day in her final year in office, were made under her name. That someone, unfortunately, has got hold of her unmasking form, and they took it to the photocopier and ran off 260 copies, and they've been filing unmasking requests with Samantha Power's name at the bottom of it. Do you think Samantha Power, who's so brilliant at unmasking all these Trump associates that the previous administration was eavesdropping on, basically the Trump administration, like that's Banana Republic stuff too, is eavesdropping on its political opponents. It's wiring its political opponents. And the woman who's so interested in this that she gets 260 people unmasked now says that it was just someone using her name to get all these people unmasked. So now we need to unmask the people who are pretending to be Samantha Power to get all these people unmasked. I don't know why anybody puts up with it. And it's only because we have the most thoroughly castrated media in the world that they would even be able to type this nonsense with a straight face. But they are the court eunuchs for Obama, and even though he is gone, they are determined to remain loyal to him. So now we need Samantha Power, who can get 260 people unmasked when she wants to see if she could lift a finger to get unmasked all these people who are supposedly pretending to be Samantha Power when they make unmasking requests. It's masks all the way down. Mark Stein on the EIB network. We'll close it out in a moment. I'm still trying to wrap my head around that. And I don't actually discount that's true. It's so crazy here that the bureaucracy is so diseased that it might be entirely impossible. It might be entirely possible to make unmasking requests simply by writing Susan Rice's or Samantha Power's name at the bottom of the request form. I intend to try it. I'm going to find the top secret fax line or whatever they're using over there deep in the bowels of the intelligence community, and I'm going to see if I can make an unmasking request using Samantha Power's name and see if the name comes back to me. But that is now Samantha Power's excuse as to why a diplomat is pretending to be a super secret spy master, is that people were making unmasking requests on her. We need to unmask the unmasker. As OJ would say, well, it's basically an OJ defense. She won't rest until she unmasks the real unmasker, just as OJ is still looking for the real killers. I've had a ball these last 3 hours. Thank you for sticking with me. But please, there's no need to stand up or take a knee. Rush will be back tomorrow.